The legal battle between the president and a former adult film star is escalating. Stormy Daniels filed a lawsuit against President Trump seeking permission to talk about an alleged affair with Mr. Trump. The president's legal team denies the affair and says she needs to follow a non-disclosure agreement. CBS News chief legal correspondent Jan Crawford has more.
The president's personal lawyer actually tried to head off this lawsuit and keep Ms. Daniels from talking, getting a temporary restraining order last week through private arbitration that he says, among other things, blocked her from filing it. The White House says that proves the president has prevailed. But her lawyer told CBS News that those claims are, quote, ludicrous. When allegations of an affair a decade ago between the president and the former porn star became news earlier this year,
did you have a sexual relationship with Donald Trump?
Stormy Daniels went on late-night television and said her lips were sealed.
Do you have a non-disclosure agreement?
Do I?
Daniels now wants to talk. In the lawsuit, she says that, quote, hush agreement is not binding because Mr. Trump never signed it. Daniels alleges she started an intimate relationship with Mr. Trump in the summer of 2006 that continued well into 2007. That would have been shortly after his wife Melania gave birth to their son. Flash forward 9 years. Less than 2 weeks before the 2016 election, Daniels signed the non-disclosure agreement under the pseudonym Peggy Peterson, taking $130,000 in exchange for her silence. Mr. Trump's personal attorney, Michael Cohen, also signed the agreement. But the lawsuit says Mr. Trump, using the alias David Dennison, left his signature line blank. For a man who likes his name on all his properties, as a businessman, Mr. Trump reportedly used pseudonyms to talk to the media or defend his real estate dealings. After the story broke, Cohen said publicly that Mr. Trump didn't know about the agreement and that he made the payment on his own.
I think it is completely uncredible.
On CBS This Morning, Daniels' lawyer Michael Avenatti scoffed.
You would have to conclude that Mr. Cohen was operating on his own. Mr. Trump knew nothing about it. And in fact, the drafted agreement had a place for Mr. Trump to sign, multiple places.
CBS News legal analyst Ricky Kleeman says it's not whether Mr. Trump knew about the agreement and failed to sign it. The key issue of whether Daniels can tell all is that Cohen broke the secrecy. It sounds like you're saying that's a pretty good argument.
I think the best argument is that Michael Cohen talked about it and that therefore the door is open.
And now there is a clause in the agreement that Daniels would have to pay $1 million in damages to a person she says is Donald Trump every time she talks. So it would be at least in her interest to try to get approval from a judge before she says anything. Brooke.
Okay, Jan Crawford, thanks. For more, let's bring in Seth Berenzweig. He's a business litigation attorney, also in Washington. Seth, Ms. Daniels' attorney says that the agreement is invalid because David Dennison, who he says is President Trump, David never signed this agreement. Does that argument carry water?
Well, I think it does carry water, but that's really just one of a couple of pieces of this legal puzzle that come together to demonstrate, in my view, that the president just got legally outmaneuvered by a porn star. She has the better argument here. It's not just that the president, or at that time, candidate Trump, never signed this agreement. In order to be able to have a binding agreement, which in turn would then require arbitration, you have to be able to show that the parties actually mutually assented to the agreement. And if there's no clear demonstration of that, then it clearly doesn't apply. You have a situation where
Donald Trump... So
then
it doesn't matter whether he signed it, right?
It does. It's a big part of the puzzle, but it demonstrates, and the argument here is that allegedly he never signed it, he never assented to it, allegedly he never even funded it, and Michael Cohen, his lawyer, subsequently might have breached it because he's the one that disclosed the non-disclosure agreement. So I think that Stormy Daniels is the one that's coming out of the gate with a very clever legal maneuver, and those are strong arguments in this case.
Okay, you brought up a bunch of things I want to get to. This idea that the agreement, because Cohen is the one who signed it, and he says he's the one who paid it, he may also be the one who breached it. And so Daniels can kind of do whatever she wants. Am I understanding that correctly? And then how does that get adjudicated?
Well, that's right. That's her theory, and I think that it's a good argument because, first of all, when Michael Cohen signed the settlement agreement, he only signed it for this LLC that was set up just a couple of days before this agreement was set up. It was called Essential Consultants LLC. Michael Cohen signed this convoluted settlement agreement on behalf of the company. He didn't sign it on behalf of Donald Trump. Donald Trump never signed it. There's a blank space. He never signed off on the settlement agreement. So the reason why that's relevant is because if they can demonstrate that there's no mutual assent, not only is there no settlement agreement, but then the arbitration requirements underneath that drop out. The secret TRO restraining order that Michael Cohen got last year melts away, and then she's able to go ahead and sell this for millions to the highest bidder. So I think at this point, because of this lawsuit, which is a clever move, she really has the upper hand right now in this major legal dispute.
And the lawsuit is clever because it brings this all out into the open? And is that also what the restraining order was supposed to stop?
Yes, the restraining order was supposed to be a strong move by Michael Cohen to try to head this off. And it was basically an order from a private arbitrator that basically told her that she couldn't file a lawsuit and that she essentially had to shut up. Her lawyer came in and said, this is not fair, and he basically determined that this does not have an adequate force of law. One of the reasons why this is a clever legal move is that he's going to say, I will follow a lawful court order, and if a lawful court order tells me that this is a binding agreement, then we'll follow it. But if not, then all bets are off. And I think that they've got the better legal argument here. Once this is resolved, which should be done shortly, if she wins this case, there's going to be crippling fallout from this because the settlement agreement seems to indicate that Stormy Daniels potentially has texts and pictures that could implicate the President of the United States. So the stakes in this case are astronomical.
Now, Michael Cohen, who we see there, the president's lawyer, says he paid the settlement out of his own pocket. He was not reimbursed by the campaign. Why does that matter?
Well, I think it matters because for two reasons. On a civil front, it matters because that is a demonstration that I think he just flatly dropped the ball here. If the president never signed off on this and never funded it, then they can't demonstrate mutual assent to be able to have a non-disclosure agreement, and then Stormy Daniels is free to do whatever that she feels with regard to this controversy. On a criminal front, it could also be an illegal in-kind campaign contribution, and this may be one of the reasons why there is word out of the special prosecutor's office that Michael Cohen is a potential target or subject of the investigation. An unreported in-kind contribution for a presidential campaign could trigger a felony for multiple years in prison. So there are huge civil and criminal ramifications that flow through this situation that's going on in this courthouse in Los Angeles right now.
In the few seconds we have left, how does this lawsuit play out? How long does it take? What do we expect?
I think it'll be done in a couple of months, and I predict that Stormy Daniels wins. The president and his lawyer put together a very convoluted, murky deal. They're not going to be a sympathetic party to the court, and at the end of the day, I think that Stormy Daniels outmaneuvered the president. She's got the better legal arguments. I predict in a few months she's going to be free to do whatever she wants. There'll be major fallout from this case, and there's nothing the president can do about it.
Okay, Attorney Seth Berenzweig from Washington, thanks so much.
My pleasure.